Okay, real talk. When was the last time a movie actually made you sit still? No scrolling, no checking your phone, no hearing the pings that come from your apps, just you, the screen, and the story that quietly sneaks up on you and refuses to let you go. That's what happened to me with this one. Hi, I'm Paula, and this is a space where I talk about movies, books, series, or honestly, anything that it's worth sharing with you guys. So, there's a Portuguese novel published back in 2011 that the literary world pretty much agreed it was impossible to adapt. So the literary world basically said it was too poetic, too sensorial, too magical. Those are the actual words used at the time. So what did the Brazilian director do when he heard of that? He smiled at the face of danger, as we say it, and he made the movie anyway. And the result is one of the most quietly beautiful films to come out of Brazil in the last years. It's sitting right there on Netflix. Tonight for you to watch it. I am talking about The Son of a Thousand Men, or O Filho de Mil Homens. It's available on Netflix. It's starring Rodrigo Santoro, directed by Daniel Rezende, and based on the novel by Valter Hugo Mãe. It's a film about loneliness, about chosen family, about a kind of masculinity you almost never see on the screen. Stick around because we are covering it all. The book, the director who refused to take no for an answer, and why Rodrigo Santoro, my ultimate 1990s and 2000s girl crush, might be giving one of his most heartfelt performances. So before we get to the film, let's talk about the book, because once I found out where this story comes from, the whole thing hit me a little bit differently. And remember, I did not read the book. So the author name is Valter Hugo Mãe, one of the most awarded writers in Portugal. Let me tell you some interesting facts about him. Number one, he has more than 30 published books, of which 4 novels were written in lowercase on purpose. That's a deliberate choice, and it tells you something about who this man is before even reading a single page. Like, I could identify what the heck he was trying to do. But I found out through research that he wanted to make the oral nature of the text stand out. More than that, the lowercase letters allude to a utopia of equality, a democracy to equalize words in their spelling, allowing the reader to basically define what should or should not be accented. So number 2, his actual name is Valter Hugo Lemos. Valter Hugo Mãe is just his artistic name. Number 3, he was born in 1971 in what was then called Henrique de Carvalho in Angola. This place is now called Saurimo. He then grew up mostly in Portugal, where he lived basically most of his life. Number 4, he's a novelist, a poet, a visual artist, and, wait for it, a singer. Number 5, in 2007 he won José Saramago Literary Prize, one of the biggest awards in the Portuguese-speaking world, for his novel O Remorso de Baltasar Serapião. José Saramago himself called the book a literary tsunami. Can you imagine hearing something like that from somebody of Saramago's caliber? Mãe, in an interview about this phase, mentioned the relationship between them in the following way. I remember on the same day I received the award, he told me, however great your success may be, never lose honesty in your writing. Above all, you're absolutely alone with it. He used that speech to tell me you will always need to fight for that solitude with your writing. When you write, always feel alone. Boom. Anyway, let's leave the great words of Saramago and go back to the book we care about in this video, the book and the movie, The Son of a Thousand Men, O Filho de Mil Homens. So Valter Hugo Mãe published it in 2011. It was his 5th novel, and a lot of readers have it as their most beloved one. The story is simple at its core. Let me tell you, Crisóstomo is a fisherman who reaches 40 years old, carrying a quiet ache. He never became a father. Not for lack of wanting, life just never opened that door for him. Then, one day, an orphan boy named Camilo crosses his path. And slowly, around the two of them, something starts to form. Not a family of blood, but a family of choice. The story also follows Isaura, a young woman marked by pain and judgment, and Antonino, a misunderstood young man carrying secrets he does not know how to voice it. From my research, I found out that what makes Valter Hugo Mãe writing so special is that he writes prose like if it's poetry. Every sentence apparently is an image. The advice I saw online was that it's kind of a book you need to read it slowly because you don't want it to end. And here's a nice detail. When the author finally saw the finished Netflix film, he said, "It's far more than I could have imagined." He even told CNN Brazil that the movie is absolutely magnificent. He said something that I think every screenwriter out there dreams of hearing from the original book author that they're adapting. That it's the same story that he created, just told by a different medium. I guess we can officially call that a blessing from Valter Hugo Mãe. Now let's talk about Daniel Rezende, the director of the movie. His career path matters here because it explains a lot about why this film looks and feels the way it does. He didn't start as a director, he started as a film editor. And not just any editor. He is the guy who cut the emblematic Cidade de Deus, or City of God. Yes, I am talking about Fernando Meirelles' 2002 landmark. Oscar-nominated, BAFTA-winning, one of those films that genuinely changed how people thought about Brazilian cinema, or any cinema for that matter. He also edited Tropa de Elite, or Elite Squad, Diários de Motocicleta, or The Motorcycle Diaries, and almost as a footnote, Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. That's what I call an editor's resume, right? So he moved into directing in 2017 with Bingo o Rei das Manhãs, or Bingo the King of the Mornings. Then to the high-ticket Brazilian live-action Turma da Mônica, Laços, or Monica's Gangs film. He's a versatile guy. But let me tell you, The Son of a Thousand Men is different from everything that he's done before. He's the first one to admit it. In an interview with Deadline, he said it plainly. "I heard from a lot of people that it was a book that it was impossible to adapt because of the way Valter Hugo Mãe dealt with the words in Portuguese. It was so poetic, it was so sensorial, it's so magical. This man could not be stopped from doing this." Rezende has talked before about only wanting to make things that he has no idea how to make it. I personally admire that a lot. He basically said that it's the not knowing that gets him out of bed. And here's the personal part that I wanted to share with you guys. For the first time in his career, he did not just direct the film or edit the film by that matter. He wrote the screenplay himself. He told Deadline he had to run away from the words that Valter uses on the book and translate that poetry into images, into silence, into something that it was actually cinematic rather than literary, which meant that he needed to transform Crisóstomo almost completely. Apparently in the book, this main character, he talks a lot. Now, in the film, he doesn't talk. It's almost nothing. And building that silence wasn't something abstract, artistic choice. It was real. It was a layered process. Daniel Rezende described working through it in stages with the actor Rodrigo Santoro. First, they nailed down the character's backstory through basically pure conversation. Then, they shifted into physical work to figure out how to move and carry himself on the screen. Then, literary deconstruction of the way that he spoke. And finally, doing some intense sensory and emotional work using breathing exercises, walking in barefoot for hours, and meditation to get to the final character. Underneath it all, it was a theme Rezende cared about deeply, a version of masculinity he says he almost never sees represented in art in general. A man who listens, who connects, who isn't ruled by forced performances or violence. And that was the rule. And Rodrigo Santoro almost turned it down. So, now, let's talk about him, Rodrigo Santoro. If you grew up in Brazil in the late 90s or 2000s like me, you already know what he meant to that era. He was the guy, the most talked about face on Brazilian television. It was telenovela after telenovela. He was like our Brad Pitt. It's kind of a random comparison, but just to get the picture of it. He had the kind of presence that made people stop flipping through a magazine to just look at him twice. He was the crush of every millennial. But here's what people sometimes forget. He has always been a sensational actor. Rodrigo Santoro was born in the small town of Petrópolis in the state of Rio de Janeiro in 1975. He joined Rede Globo's Actors Workshop in 1993. So the telenovela came fast for him, so did the fame, but he was clearly hungry for more than that. In 2001, he found it. It was in the movie Bicho de Sete Cabeças, internationally known as Brainstorm. He played a teenager wrongly institutionalized in a psychiatric hospital. It was basically a raw role and committed, nothing like the TV crush image he had built recently. The performance was strong enough that a Canadian director saw the film, tracked him down, and cast him in a TV production filmed alongside nobody other than Helen Mirren. So Hollywood followed that. Charlie's Angel, Full Throttle, then Love Actually. He did also a run on TV show Lost, and then the role that basically really put him on the global map, Zack Snyder's 300, where he appeared draped in gold, all menace and spectacle. He became the first Brazilian actor ever nominated for the MTV Movie Awards for Best Villain. Then he did Che, I Love You, Philip Morris, Ben-Hur, Westworld, a long, varied, solid international career. But over the years, something shifted for Rodrigo. He basically started chasing roles with real interior lives instead of spectacle. Roles that don't make it easy on the actor. And here's the thing though. When his agent first sent him the script for Crisóstomo, Santoro almost said no. He talked about reading it and thinking, this character, he's flesh and blood. He's pure literature. I cannot do this. Gorgeous on the page, but you know what? How the heck do I play this? And his agent answer was basically, I don't know it either, but we can figure it out together. And that's what they did. In his own words to Deadline, Santoro explained what the character is really reaching for. Not just adopting a son, but adopting the other, adopting the world, adopting yourself, really looking inwards in a world where we're desperate for a connection, but mostly just staring at our screens instead. He says almost none of that out loud in the film. It's all presence, all stillness, a pair of eyes carrying the inner life inside of himself. Rodrigo Santoro's Crisóstomo is the anchor of the movie as a protagonist, but the people around him, they're basically what make the film feel genuine. Johnny Massaro plays Antonino. We have talked about him in a previous video, remember? Antonino is a young gay man crushed by religious pressure at home and violence from men around him. Santoro himself has talked about an interesting fact that it is that Antonino is the opposite end of masculinity from Crisóstomo. Essentially two very different kinds of men represented in ways that basically somehow complete each other. Rebecca Jamir plays Isaura. She's a woman pushed towards marriage and she doesn't want to do that, carrying her own quiet devastation. She brings real emotional precision to a role that could have easily tipped into melodrama. Miguel Martinez plays Camilo, the orphan boy at the center of it all. He is a genuine find. And there's a naturalness to him on the screen that makes you wonder where he's been hiding this whole time. Juliana Caldas is Francisca, a young woman who lives with dwarfism, and the envy of her neighbors does not let her sexuality fade. So much so that she gets pregnant. And routing things up is Gracie Passot and Carlos Francisco, the legendary Zezé Mota, who lends the film her own narration of the story. Her voice alone carries decades of Brazilian storytelling history, and it gives the whole thing an extra layer of warmth and peace. In the movie, the central themes intertwine themselves in a discussion about breaking conventions and the possibility of forming new concepts of family through affection. Let's talk about how this film actually looks. Spoiler, it's beautiful. It was shot across two locations that together build a world of their own. First one is Búzios, in the state of Rio de Janeiro. All sea and fishing boats and weathered coastline. The second one is Chapada Diamantina in Bahia, with its vast, almost worldly landscape soaked in natural lighting. The cinematography is by Azul Serra, and there's something genuinely clever in how he and his angel uses the camera. Early in the film, both the wide shots and the tight close-ups do the same job. They communicate isolation, emptiness, the sense of being stranded inside your own life. But as the story opens up, those exact same choices start meaning something different. The close-ups stop feeling lonely and start feeling intimate. Wide shots stop feeling empty and start being full. And now the rhythm. This is not a film that you put in the background while you're cutting and chopping zucchini for dinner. You gotta pay attention, and it's deliberately slow. It has long periods of silences, extended takes, moments that you need to breathe. It basically refuses to get rushed. Rezende built that on purpose, drawing directly from the novel, timeless, placeless quality. The story doesn't really belong to any specific decade or location. It exists somewhere in a kind of poetic in-between. And it's all intentional. The film also blends realism and fantasy by overlaying genres like fiction and suspense onto the drama. The subtleties of interpretation and the visual metaphors chosen brings the movie look and feel close to magical realism. Daniel Rezende, though, explained a bit in an interview, and I quote here, "We have enormous difficulty looking at ourselves. What is portrayed in a very cruel and realistic way tends to distance us. We didn't want magical realism to take over the film's narrative. We wanted it to dictate the environment that connects these characters to themselves." And I'll give you a little example of how Daniel brought this to life. Crisóstomo's house has no doors, and sunlight streams through the windows, which invites Isaura into the protagonist's life. How poetic and how beautiful is that? So, how was it actually received? The film premiered at the 49th São Paulo International Film Festival, one of Latin America's most important film events, and it was before opening in theaters and landing on Netflix shortly after. A lot of critics circled it as one of the standout of Brazilian releases of 2025. Adoro Cinema and many other outlets called it one of the most remarkable Brazilian works of 2025. Praising a story that bets on experience and sensation over easy explanation. But not everyone agreed with this. Portugal's Público published a genuinely brutal article accusing Rezende of relying on a glossy, hollow visual and dialogue that borderlined a parody. Now, here's my honest read on that split. And I did not read the book, and I thought it was beautiful. It made me cry, it made me think, it made me go deep into my heart and reflect about quite a few things of society. And I want movies to do that. Now, having said that, the film does ask a lot of patience from you. If you're used to the 2026 life rhythms, it might be a bit slow. And the movie does lean into its own poetry. But that same excess is also what gives the film its identity. There's something genuinely rare about a film that it's willing to risk alienating part of the audience in order to fully commit to what it's trying to say. Plus, it's a rare movie that shows a protagonist that allows us to talk about a contemporary and much needed topic in the world that we live in, which is masculinity. It clearly shows how connection is vitally needed for every single one of us and how we're all interconnected in this world. This is a world where we are very much absorbed by how much we have to perform, how much we have to win, how much we have to do. And I believe it's healthy to believe in people, to look, read, and feel poetry through words and or images. So at its core, The Son of a Thousand Men is a fairy tale for adults. No villains, no twist, just something rare than either of those things. In a world that it's loud, that it's rushed, and constantly try to sell the next thing that is coming up, it is a film that you need to sit in silence and trust that you will stay with it. That's almost like a radical move. So, quiet evening, good screen, chocolate, popcorn, phone face down, let it find you. Tell me in the comments, have you seen it? Did you land? Did it land for you? Or did you find yourself in the hater camp? And tell me, of course, did Rodrigo Santoro change how you think about him as an actor? Just a little thing, don't forget, subscribe, ring the little bell on YouTube if you want more of this, and send it to someone who deserves a really good film this evening, a slow down thing just to relax and reflect about life. See you in the next one, guys. Ciao, ciao!